Millennium of Night Bliss is the fifth full-length from Italian old-school style death metal band Valgrind, or Valgrind, however you'd pronounce the name. It's So this band has roots that stretch all the way back to the mid to late 90s, about 1995, 1996, where the uh, former members of a band named Necrospell, which most people haven't heard of, started this band. And this was focused on the earliest influences were pretty clearly Morbid Angel and Nocturnus, and obviously that also would include Immolation, Pestilence, just let's say 86 to 93 death metal in general was obviously the driver for what Valgrind were all about. Now, obviously they have other heavy metal influences that have sparked up on different albums over the years, but it is important to note that this band really didn't get started until, um, I guess I would probably say 2012, and they'd sort of reformed and picked up where they left off. Now, there was no lack of, starting back up, um, but each record has been particularly different. And I think that the problem has been more continuity than anything else. It's that they're so steeped in traditional death metal and so interested in it and so ready to just sit down and write riffs that uh, as a listener, you're not sure what any album is going to be. You're not sure what the identity of the band is as you go through their first several records, because one of them sounds quite a bit like Dawn of Possession. The next one sounds quite a bit like a little bit like Nocturnus, and um, Blessed Are the Sick is obviously an influence on their riffcraft, and there's even some melody that's shown up on the last few. So, well, let's get to the first preview song, and then I'll sort of say how I see it. So with Blackest Horizon, I think that was sort of a hinge point back in 2018 where the band decided that the way they were going to approach things was just a little bit different, maybe a little bit more focused on delivering just the fundamentals of death metal and moving away from some of the more loose and technical aspects of things and focusing on the riff. And that gave us Condemnation, which was a really fine record. It was the way I see their style now, it's sort of like where Merciless were at on Abject Offerings. There's a little bit of Pestilence, a little bit of the Florida death metal, forcing all that along in terms of pace. Uh, and there's some of the technical slash progressive ideas that Pestilence has started to infuse into Testimony of the Ancients in a lot of the way they approach riffcraft. Now, the interesting part is that, well, this record is a continuation of what they were doing on Condemnation in a lot of ways, in terms of the production values being similar, the pace being similar, and some of the general approach to riffcraft coming from the same sort of yarn. But these are slightly more aggressive in pace at times and slightly more melodic. I would say semi-melodic at least half of the time, and focused on the 89 to 92 standard of riffcraft, which was pack as much as you can in with sense and then master it in terms of an impressive showing. Line it all up in a way that isn't salad, but comes together with sense. The way they bind things together with sense here is with melody. And when I say melody, I mean in the most classic, earliest sense of melodic death metal, where a band like Unanimated showed up with In the Garden of Dreaming Dead, in the Forest of the Dreaming Dead, sorry. And that's kind of sort of the standard of what they do when they touch upon melodicism. And for me, that blows my mind. That's something that I particularly like, especially if we're talking about Unanimated and Merciless in the same review. That's something I like quite a bit. So yeah, there's a song that sounds like Morbid Angel. There's a song that definitely has a deep touch of Pestilence in the style of riff here and there, and you can tell where they're coming from. But you can tell this is also a Valgrind record too. I think it's important. It's like I've liked their last three records quite a bit, and this one feels like it's continuing to amplify the best elements. They're learning from what they're doing in a way where, yeah, they could play with these variations forever, but this is a particularly good death metal album, and I think people who are willing to dig into the actual riffs, sit down with the album as an experience, and there's a thrill to this type of thing being done well, and it really is here. It was there on Condemnation, maybe less focused in some ways, but the leads do a lot to add to that. I think the leads are a little bit more erratic and expressive here in some ways, and the performance just seemed to have tightened over time between 2018 and now. So, I'm very impressed by this record. It is one of my favorite records of April. It is a very high recommendation for me. I think if you're prone to sort of overlook death metal that just appears average, or there's no hype behind it, so you're not going to get behind it, it's a big mistake in this case. I think that this is a great record and definitely deserves your full attention, if you will. You can read what I think in the written review, or you can go listen to this record when it releases in a few days.